I chose the title The Mosaic of Islam for my book precisely because I think this is one of the least appreciated aspects of Islam and about the Muslims as well. We really don't appreciate and acknowledge the diversity within Islam. I'm not only talking about ethnic and language diversity. If we look at the Muslims, often when someone will ask you how many Muslims you have around the world, the number today is little more than 1.6 billion. But this number means nothing because I cannot generate out of it anything meaningful. Precisely because the 1.6 million Muslims are divided in terms of ethnicities, divided in terms of languages, and divided in terms of religious persuasions. The diversity of Islam is this, that you have huge richness in terms of the makeup and also in terms of what these Muslims do as Muslims. That is the kind of Islam that they put into practice. We don't realize that there are today at least 3 divisions within Islam. If we count the Baha'i as Muslims, that would add another 4th. If we count the Ahmadis as another division within Islam, that would add a 5th. So here you start looking at the complexity in terms of the different groups that constitute Islam. But then when we start looking at Sunni Islam, if we were to say the majority of Muslims are Sunni, often we just take that term and apply it to all the Sunnis, when actually Sunni Muslims are divided themselves into 5 different schools. And what constitutes Sunnism for one is not necessarily the same for the other Sunni school of law. And historically, what is fascinating, again, by appealing to traditional Sunni Islam, is that they used to function with complete awareness that there is this diversity, and they took the diversity as something that is inherently richness. That is, if we look at some very serious legal scholars from the 6th century, for instance, a very famous one called Ibn Qudama, he was asked, how long can a woman be pregnant? And he said, you know what, we Sunnis have 7 different opinions about this. And he listed the opinion of all the major figures associated with the different schools of Sunni law, which range, by the way, from 9 months to indefinite. A woman can be indefinitely pregnant. Because if God wants a woman to be indefinitely pregnant, then God can do that. That's, again, part of a belief. Obviously, today we don't think of it logical. So why did this guy, Ibn Qudama, who was a Hanbali, very strict Hanbali, accommodate for all these opinions in his legal textbook? And the answer is that because he, as a Sunni, could not say all the others are wrong. That in and of itself tells us a lot about the diversity of Islam. The same way with Shi'ism. There is a very rich diversity. The Muslims don't agree pretty much on anything other than there is no God but God and Muhammad is a messenger of God. Anything after that we add, you're always going to find Muslim groups who are going to stand up and say, sorry, I don't accept this. And that diversity is very badly appreciated today. Very badly appreciated because partly the way, again, I go back to the modern state formation. When modern states started to take religion under their umbrella, they invariably imposed one form of Islam over the others. And that, the casualty were the other forms of Islam that they lost a lot of state sponsorship. And therefore, they start suffering. The problem is that if we look at communities where you have communities of immigrations, that is like in Europe, France, for example, the Muslims that come here, at one point probably they came from North Africa, hence we might have over-representation of Islam as a Maliki form of Islam. So you took lots of North African, for them Islam seems to be the Maliki Islam. But when you start now look at immigrants who come from Turkey, for them the reference point is a different Islam, is a Hanafi Islam. If we start looking at now the groups that are coming from the Arab world, for them Islam is different. I mean Arab world here, Egypt and Syria, and Iraq, the Islam that is more popular Islam is neither Maliki nor Hanafi, it's mostly Shafi'i Islam. If we look at those who come from sub-Saharan Africa, who are associated with the Marabouts, and for them the more serious form of Islam is the Sufi guru kind of Islam, the Sufi charismatic leader. We see a lot of Sufi practices among some Muslims here in France and in Europe. What we need to do is we need to infuse life into this diversity instead of forcing one over the other, because if we champion one over the others are going to reject it, and it's going to create crisis. It's going to sustain what we call the war within Islam. What we need to do is open up a space for each of these groups to be legitimate and to be practiced without any problems, without any bullying on the part of the other. In a way, what we need an Islam that is an umbrella. We need an Islam that's a mosaic, the way it used to be, when things were going well for the Muslims. And because things were going well for the Muslims, they tolerated this kind of diversity. Possibly because we have a crisis, people look at the diversity as something that's inherently negative. That is, the more fragmented they are, the more we are incapable of answering the challenges of modernity. I think we need to change that kind of operating thought into the more we are diverse, the richer we are and the more powerful we are. That is, there is power in diversity rather than weakness in diversity. We need to focus on that diversity. I cannot emphasize that enough. And we need to create policies that support and sustain that kind of diversity. And in this way, instead of encouraging the war within Islam, you encourage them more to see the ways that brings them together. That is, they look at the broader picture. What makes them all Muslims? And very much as we do here, religious rapprochement between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and try to force the three or inspire the three to look at what they have in common, we need to create the same dynamic within Islam. Look at the diversity and encourage the Muslims to think of what is the common, to look at what is the common between them.